Hello, everybody.
Hello.
How are we?
We're good. Oh, Minnie's over here as well. Hello.
Oh, the participants are racking up.
This is the first thing. Oh. Hi, Jacob.
Oh, I don't know where that watch little screen that came from. Kia ora, everyone.
Kia ora.
Yeah, turn it off.
Oh, it's going to be an interesting test.
Yeah, talk about start with the big numbers. I think we've got about 95 participants today, so this will be a very interesting session.
It's actually about 108, Marion.
Oh, 108.
Oh.
Excellent. No pressure.
Just what you want for a roundtable discussion.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, we're up to 75 at the moment, so we might give everyone a couple more minutes.
It's going to be four pages. You just like to scroll through and see if who else has got call center chic going on, or what's in people's houses. You know, it's really interesting. Oh, that's a nice piece of artwork. Or
And no, it's not for sale.
No, that's just me. That just does it. Okay.
All right, what are we up to? 77. All right, we might wait one more minute and then we will crack on because there is a fair amount to get through in the next hour.
There's people registering now.
Oh, good.
I'll just quickly send them the link.
Yeah. Okay, what we might do is we'll just get through a bit of admin while we wait for the rest of the crew to join us. So I'm sure by now you all are sick of Zoom and its quirks and things. So, but just obviously this has blown out into numbers that we were not expecting. We've absolutely smashed the APSAA webinar record today. So what was going to be what we thought maybe 15 to 20 people having an informal chat is not going to be sustainable with 78 to 100 participants. So what I will ask for everyone today is to use the chat function to ask questions and feedback some information to us. There are 4 of us on the call monitoring the chat, so we will get through everything as quickly as we possibly can, but it just allows us to effectively do that without lots of people talking over the top of each other and then us losing that audio. I would ask that your mic is muted until we get to a point where we ask you to speak or maybe give us some more feedback on a question that you might have. Just so that we can keep that background noise to a minimum while we go through this presentation. So now I'm going to try and do, if people are aware that their chat bubble is down the bottom of Zoom, so if you just click on that, it'll bring up that chat function for you to talk, and you can either share your chat with everybody or share it privately with individuals. Just as an FYI, please note that the chat gets recorded along with this session, so you know, don't write anything like Marion could have done her hair better today, because it will be recorded on there and then shared with the membership afterwards. So if you can just be mindful of that when you're going through that function. So I'm going to try and do something here, which is share the presentation.
Marion, somebody has just chatted that even private messages do get recorded.
Oh, okay. So yeah, just be maybe aware of that.
Yeah.
Are you seeing this on your big screen now?
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so we will launch in. Obviously, people will come and go as they need to. I can't now see any of you, so you can do what you like on your cameras. This presentation today is really to talk about ResLife. It is aimed at ResLife teams, and myself and Jacob got together and sort of wanted to pull something to share with everybody. I know at the moment people are in various states dealing with this COVID-19 pandemic. Some are further down the track than others, acknowledging that the people that we have on this call is absolutely representative of what APSAA is. I know that we have many, many people here from different aspects of our industry, whether that's running corporate PBSA facilities, on-campus accommodation or residential colleges. Everybody is facing very similar challenges, but in very different parts of our market. So what we're going to go through today is really to give everyone a bit of a taste of what's possible and to start that conversation. It's certainly not the end of the conversation, and we understand there will be plenty more to come, and we plan to do lots more of this because the engagement that we're getting is absolutely fantastic. So we will be sharing this after, as I said, on the members' resources. So those that have come through and can't actually be on the call today will be able to access this, other colleagues of yours. So please feel free to share that, and we will contact you at the end with some more. So just going to flick through, just some introductions. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Marion Bailey. I'm the current APSAA President and General Manager at Geelong Deakin Residential Services. On the call also with me is Jacob. Do you want to say hi, Jacob?
Kia ora koutou whānau. Jacob Waitiri, Head of Accommodation Operations at the University of Auckland.
And my trusted APSAA Vice President. I've also got Laura Burge helping us out on this call and put some content together for us as well. Do you want to say hi, Laura?
Hi, everyone.
Laura is our current chair of our PD committee at APSAA, but also the Student Experience Manager at Deakin Residential Services. And I've got Jell on the call as well. Jell, are you there?
Hello.
Yes, Campus Life Coordinator at Deakin Residential Services. So we are going through some case studies that they will contribute to as well, and have helped me pull this together in quite a short time frame. So that is the four of us. So just to give you an idea of what we're going to go through today, we've obviously done a bit of an intro, just some Zoom info about where this is going and how to use that effectively. We're going to be talking about some key areas, and I know that there is going to be a lot of questions around the table in different areas, and we may end up going off on a bit of a tangent. So we are going to try and pull it back to this because we have only got this hour, but Laura and Jell are frantically taking notes of questions or chat that we're getting if there's particular areas that we can't go into today, so that we can revisit them in future webinars with you, or facilitate smaller group discussions if there's a few of you that want to discuss about something in particular. So we will try and keep on track with student welfare and duty of care, digital programming and events, give you some useful resources that we found, give some time to some more collaboration and maybe some questions via chat, and then talk to you about future topics and upcoming webinars that APSAA can help facilitate. So we'll kick off with student welfare and duty of care. We're really obviously keen to talk the fun stuff of engagement. Most of us that work in that student engagement and ResLife space enjoy the events and the engagement time side of what we do, but it is important to discuss how at the moment in particular we are managing student welfare through engagement and satisfying our duty of care, obviously as professionals within our industry. We again acknowledge the diversity of the accommodation industry, so we know that there are different models being implemented, whether that's through your student leadership models, your business models, etc. So this isn't a one size fits all, and it's not going to be a case of this is best practice and everybody should be following it. You are going to need to obviously adapt and interpret that to your working environment, your cohorts of students, and what you're dealing with at that present time, but we're hoping it gives you something to start with. So we're looking through, we've put together, I guess, a bit of a progress when you're talking about student welfare and duty of care. we now have the ability, obviously currently, to conduct virtual welfare meetings. I think pretty much across the board now in our region, we are not in a capacity to really do face-to-face welfare and engagement, or we're trying to reduce that from a staff protection perspective. So looking at what virtual welfare check-ins and considerations might be for you in your environment. So using the structures and systems you've already got, but transferring them onto digital platforms. So we all know that everyone has the capacity to do welfare checks with particular residents, whether that's, again, through your student model up into your staffing, or whether that's part of your weekly, monthly, semesterly check-ins with all of your residents. So we want to continue that, obviously, in order to maintain contact. So it's about doing it, but in a platform that then protects both you and them, potentially in lockdown situations, or if not in lockdown yet, certainly in social distancing situations. We encourage students to use phone and email where possible in advance. That obviously reciprocates the advice given by government in order to contact health professionals. So we're asking people to ring our reception areas or email our reception areas prior to arriving at reception to talk to our administrative teams. You can make appointments via appointments model on StarRes if you have that, or there would be other channels you normally use if a student would like to access your welfare teams, your ResLife teams. Then you can use obviously things like Zoom, GoToMeeting, Skype for Business. There's lots of online platforms for you to then conduct those welfare meetings. Some areas, and we'll talk a little bit about what's happening at DRS and Uni of Auckland, because that's the two case studies that we are sharing with you today. But some areas are choosing to do one-on-one catch-ups now that occupancies are lower than we have experienced at the start of the year, with students choosing to go home. So there is an opportunity there to do actually quite in-depth welfare checking one-on-one in some circumstances, if that fits your current roster. I guess the key thing to be mindful of is that, you know, we want to make sure we understand what the current referral services and supports are available. So it's all well and good setting up your meetings with your residents, making sure that you're there having that conversation, but when one of them presents a concern, your standard referrals or service and supports that you may have in place across your residences may not be operating as business as usual either. So prior to you making those calls, it is really important that the staff that are doing those welfare checks, whether it's you or your teams, have got the necessary information to current referral services, so that you are not referring someone off to a support service that currently is overwhelmed, whether that's a local health authority or whether that's internal university referral services. You would all have in place your own out of hours and during hours referrals to key services, and therefore making sure that you're aware of how they're operating and are they still available before you start sending off residents to them. Nothing more frustrating than thinking you're going somewhere to get help and then not being able to get that help. Make sure you've got your localised COVID-19 hotlines. I know there are those across our region in the Asia Pacific available to be used. So make sure you've got that information too, just in case you are getting questions around symptoms and concerns that some residents may have. The next thing we've just got there is boundaries of support. There may be limits to who and how you can offer welfare support to your residents. Some of you may be engaging with residents that have actually left residences and choosing to maintain that community engagement so that when we get back to business as usual, we can get them all back onto campus. So there may be some differences around the welfare support you can offer those that have already chosen to go home versus those that you currently have in situ on residences. So just being clear what that looks like for you and your teams around which sectors of your cohort are you doing particular welfare checks to. It doesn't mean you won't do any at all for others, but you may be doing one-on-one welfare checks for those in room and then doing social engagement stuff on Facebook, etc., to maintain a level of welfare support to those that have already chosen to go home or are not currently on residences with you. It is a very difficult time for everybody, so it's also important that you've got boundaries of the support you can give for your staff and your teams. They're obviously handling stuff remotely, which puts additional pressure on you and your teams to deliver. So please make sure that you've also got boundaries around that, and that may be around ensuring teams aren't making 20 phone calls in a row and are getting adequate time out from that kind of consistent. There is a theme that there's not really much good news out there when we're doing welfare checks, because everyone's struggling in some capacity during this pandemic. So we also need to make sure our staff who may be making calls from home, out of working from home environment, have still got that capacity for support, time out, and looking after their own welfare as well. Moving through to statutory requirements, and I'll flick this one over to Jacob, because I think there's been a little bit more clear direction in New Zealand as a whole around statutory requirements. So I'll get Jacob to talk to that in New Zealand.
Good, thank you, Miriam. I think it's just really important, acknowledging again that we operate in really complex and unique environments across the Asia Pacific area, that we understand what is being asked of us by our government. So, for example, the operating environment in New Zealand is that the Ministry of Education required that tertiary education institutions had residential facilities available. So all of a sudden that makes us an essential service at the university, which we all like to know that accommodation professionals are essential. You're all essential to us. We talk about you every day as members, and it's also about, again, we've got a code of practice here in New Zealand that resulted in, as one of the outcomes of the unfortunate Christchurch incident that last year about the student who was found deceased in their residence. So for us, it's very clear that if a student is still engaged with a tertiary education institute, they have very clear service level standards of what we have to do to support that student. In addition to that, if they've contracted with accommodation, even if they're physically not on campus with us, we still have an extra level of care with them. So it's understanding what do you have to do in a legislative perspective. And for us, it's really made sure that how we're communicating bits and pieces to our students is robust in that way. And then it feeds into a lot of the reporting and capturing of data, how do we know the effectiveness of certain things that we do for our self-assessments and peer assessments to the government. So it's just making sure that you understand what the expectation of your government is, and then how does it feed into current legislation there. So it's a really interesting environment to operate in, and you're essentially what we're calling ourselves are both physical and virtual halls. So yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. I guess the Australian challenge within that as well is that there are different statutory requirements across different states. So those of you working with providers that provide accommodation cross state boundaries are having to deal with that additional level of statutory requirement. When we're looking at student welfare and duty of care, obviously that also lends into the fact that we have an emphasis on being a positive part of community, and therefore social distancing rules, etc., that are in place across states and territories do come into play, and we do need to be making sure that whilst we can maintain certain levels of community within residences, that we're still adhering to that level of state, territory and federal social distancing rules. So there's a little bit of complexity around that in the in-person, but yes, certainly there are other requirements that we need to consider, including RTA for those that are operating in that model. And as Jacob said, that leads into that reporting and capturing of data. Again, use the systems you're used to using for that. The worst thing you can do, I think, at the moment is try and recreate the wheel of new systems and new processes while everyone's heads are spinning. So focus on what you have got, whether that's your student database is StarRes or another student database, using those tools that you already got, your staff are familiar with, your students are familiar with interacting with, so using things like appointments module, campus life modules, if you use that for persons of interest or conduct or any of that stuff, keep using those. That way you can keep capturing your data and actually look at what's happening over this period of time. Whilst we have got lower occupancies, as I said, on campuses pretty much across the board than we would normally, we know that there's a heightened sense of anxiety around financial hardship, emotional hardship, academic success, and also that engagement. So we know that we're going to see a spike in that welfare space. Any questions around that kind of process of thinking about student welfare and duty of care before we kind of move into what ResLife looks like in that programming and event space? Anyone got any questions they'd like to add to group chat, or anyone want to let me know or unmute their mic and we can have a conversation, or does that all kind of make sense?
What's that? Crickets out there, digital crickets.
It is. Digital crickets. And there's nothing coming up on my chat, so I'm going to assume that means we can move on to the fun stuff. Okay, so we are going to move on to talking about digital programming and events and what we can deliver in this space. So we all have some residents that are still living with us, maybe many residents that are still living with us. I know in some circumstances not many have left at all. Some of us have some that have gone home for the time being, waiting for the all clear to return, and some have completely left, taken all their belongings, but are wanting to stay in touch should that circumstance change to come back. So there's variance on our current cohort in room. So what we want to look at is how do we keep our residents in any of those circumstances engaged? Because obviously we also need to start thinking about recovery, that, you know, how do we recover as quickly as possible as well in returning or maintaining the students that we have on the radar. So we want them to continue to feel part of the community and ready to resume business as usual, whether they are physically in residence or physically not at that point in time. Sorry, Daniel from Latrobe's just flicked through a quick question. Any models at Deakin and Auckland for tracking welfare checks? Is it daily, weekly, and all captured on StarRes? Yes, sorry, just going back to that, Deakin and Laura will talk about a case study for Deakin and Jacob for Auckland shortly. But yes, we do have a model in place at Deakin around what that's going to look like and how we're tracking it, and it is getting tracked in StarRes, so we can certainly talk to you about how we're doing that without creating hundreds of incidents, etc. So Daniel, we can come back to you if it's not answered in Laura's section or Jacob's section later with some more information. Okay, so this one is, how do we pull together a great online engagement strategy that fulfills our objectives? And we have to do it quickly because we're already in a position where students are feeling disengaged and it's been a matter of weeks. So we really do need to get together an online strategy that makes sure we're fulfilling our normal day-to-day objectives, but we also need to do it quickly. So it has to be effective and done very quickly. So I'm going to flick through to Laura now to talk about a Deakin case study, and then she'll pass over to Jacob to talk about one at Uni of Auckland, and then hopefully from there we'll move into some tangible resources you can use and get some questions out of you from that. So I'm going to flick over to you, Laura, if that's okay.
Sure. Yeah. So I guess what we wanted to do was share a little bit what we're doing at Deakin Res. And as you can see there, I think one of the things that we wanted to do was really, I guess, acknowledge the fact that things are quite different for all of us, you know, not only in the way that we're working and working from home at the moment, but also particularly for our students. And one of the challenges we've certainly faced, as Marion has touched on, is that things are changing so quickly. So, you know, obviously Deakin had a model of programming up a couple of weeks ago, which was reflective of the current social distancing practices, and then that was required to change only a day later, which sort of threw things up in the air. But what we have done, and this is literally just out of the being confirmed today, is we've developed what we've called, I guess, a new model that reflects the fact that it isn't business as usual. And we really wanted to, we have a student experience framework that operates as when everything is happening as it should be. But what we wanted to do, I guess, was note that things aren't the same, and that we wanted to have a bit more, I guess, positive and active language around what we're doing, so that students could actually see up front that we are trying to do things slightly differently to reflect that. So this is our new model that's in place for 2020, for the foreseeable future, as long as COVID-19 is around and our students, I guess, are virtually connected. And you can see that we've gone with a bit of alliteration with a belong to your community, balance your mind and body, and broaden your horizons. And what this will do is basically guide our programming model for the year ahead, to ensure that we are actually trying to cover off those three elements. And as Marion touched on, this will apply across the whole of DRS in the sense the students that remain on campus with us in our residences dispersed amongst our campus, but also for those students that have chosen to vacate or been required to vacate, so that there is that sense of connection and that we're not completely losing, I guess, a whole year of students, which will subsequently cause further problems down the track. The three things, I guess, that we are wanting to do is really ensure that there is that sense of belonging and engagement with the community, the residential community, regardless of where they're based. We want them to obviously try and find some sort of balance between this new lifestyle that we all have, whether it's working or studying from home, but also, you know, online study for students. It's quite a challenge for all of us to go to Zoom meetings all the time and not have that social interaction that we're used to, those coffee conversations and the like. But also, I think what we want to do really is encourage our students to look beyond coronavirus. So what can we do in the interim to broaden our skill set and to add to our professional and personal development, but also what does life look like after this is all over, and how can we help them to think beyond that space. So whether that's fun stuff, so cooking classes and TikTok videos and the like, or whether it's also those things that are actually helping them continue to, I guess, improve their skill sets and what they're doing in their studies. Talking, I guess, briefly on that welfare check space, because I know that was a question that was asked. Again, that is something that we're evolving at the moment, but what we are looking at doing is creating a process whereby our current campus life teams across all of our DRS sites are in contact with current residents to ask a series of questions, I guess, that are sort of checking in at a basic level about where students are at, particularly, I guess, from a welfare point of view, but also from a financial and academic point of view. We're obviously not equipped to necessarily provide them, particularly, for example, with financial support or even obviously with academic support, but what we want to do is get a bit of a gauge of where students are at that are still with us on campus, and then follow that up so that we are, you know, as Marion said, touching base with every student that remains on campus to ensure that there is that level of support for those students that are certainly isolated to a degree. I think that's probably it from that side of things at this stage, but happy to obviously go into further detail if there's any specific questions either now or down the track. I'll hand over to you, Jacob.
Cool.
There is a
Thank you.
question there from Edwina.
Yeah, Edwina's just said, interested in how everyone is engaging with students that have departed and any strategies for engaging with parents. I'm going to be really transparent here. We were gung-ho with engaging with parents and got a little bit burnt at Deakin, have backed off a bit of the parent comms. So, I mean, we do at key points of the year converse with our emergency contacts. So we assume that's parents, but it could be guardians or whatever the emergency contact is that's nominated by the student. One is before they arrive as a bit of a, this is to what to expect. But we did make contact when this thing hit, and we did share our student comms with the emergency contact, particularly when it came to the instruction of expectations of DRS and who may be required to leave and who was going to be exempt to not have to leave. So those communications were shared with emergency contacts. This kind of engagement space stuff has not been shared with parents and probably won't be. Our Facebook groups, so we have closed Facebook groups by campus at DRS that had everybody that was in room and able to sign up to those in them, are remaining. So we haven't, even though we've had a percentage of the cohort depart with a notice to vacate and physically left and we've ceased charging them rent, they all remain in that Facebook group, and that's part of that keeping them warm and engaged. They can still do all of the activities that we put up through Zoom, Kahoot, and Facebook to keep the community engaged, because obviously our goal is that at the minute that we can, we would be returning them to residences and getting back into that community. So at the moment we're using the channels we were using while they were on campus, and we have not turned them off for students that have departed campus at DRS, but I'm sure that Jacob can have a chat around Auckland. Hamish, just to come back to you, we've got some slides on ideas for events and also a bit of an update. Jel will chime in with some stuff that we've been doing that's worked and not worked. So we will cover that shortly. So I'll flick to you, Jacob.
Cool. Kia ora everyone. So here at the University of Auckland, and shout out to all of my friends and family from the Ngā Whare Noho team, the accommodation team at Auckland. I know there's a few of us here, which is awesome. Their change management capability has been amazing. So one of the things that we adopted right at the start of the year, we've had our accommodation team departmental motto is the whakatauki, the proverb, he waka e kanoa, which is we're all in this together. And we really ramped it up this year for two reasons. One, following the Christchurch incident, we really wanted to make sure that our students felt really connected with their home from the start. And two, we've been pandemic planning for coronavirus or COVID-19 since early January, since we lost thousands of Chinese international students. So for us, it was strategic in the fact that it's important for us to make sure that everyone felt like they were a part of the accommodation family, even if they were on campus or off campus. We've got 1,600 students out of our 4,500 that are still calling us home physically with us. And then our students are still contracted to us until such time as the New Zealand national level of emergency is removed and we go from COVID alert level 4 to alert level 3 or 2. In terms of communicating with parents, I'm a really upfront, blunt person. If you're 18 years of age, you are a legal adult. I don't need to talk to mum, dad, grandma, or your family pet. However, when a national state of emergency was declared, we had a pre-prepared comms that went out to all emergency contacts. Our message was simple to our students. It was, you need to decide where you feel the most comfortable and safe to self-isolate for our 4-week lockdown period. And for a lot of students, that was a relief because they have family that have got family members with immunocompromised conditions or elderly. So the fact that we're able to be called home for that many students was great, and also many international students stranded with us. So He waka e kanoa, we're all in this together, has been the real motto of our program, and it's actually worked really well. So what we've focused on is basically it's continuing with our program, not as normal, but just amending it. So we've moved a lot of things online. We have a lot of online passive programs that are already part of what we did. So we do a Green Your Room initiative. That's a digital online engagement campaign, which was about to occur the week of lockdown occurring. So it was sort of life as normal. We added in structure and consistency. So for me, I think consistency and structure is quite freeing for people. It's knowing what was going to happen next. So while knowing that the country is going into uncertain times, knowing that, hey, at 8 o'clock, I'm still going to check in with my floor meeting on Zoom rather than in person, or at 3 o'clock on a Monday, our resident manager, our building heads, or myself will be doing a Facebook Live update for our students. Which sort of leads into, you know, we've tried to look for opportunities for student involvement. So we've actually empowered our students at home to come up with a lot of their programming and to lead a lot of the interactive things. So whether it's, hey, I'm living on a dairy farm now, how about I show you what our cows look like? You know, it's those sorts of tours have been actually really cool. And I won't touch too base on the apps that we've used because I know Jel and stuff will comment on many of those later. But one of the biggest things, it's trying to create intimacy in a digital environment. So I don't think we can underestimate the power of, you know, we might sit in on Zoom meetings for a long time, for long periods of time. But, you know, talking one-on-one with a student like this and seeing them, you know, in the evenings or later with your staff, I don't think it can be underestimated how much they appreciate those moments where, you know, you can focus on them one-on-one. So using different means to try and create those moments of digital intimacy have been really key for us. So our resident advisors are still doing their cohort meetings, their group meetings, regularly with students via Zoom or other apps. And they're also regularly checking in at least once every 2 weeks with all students, whether they're on campus or off campus. And then we're recording those that information into Staries, and staff are monitoring those and picking up students to refer on to other services. One of the really awesome things is that pastoral care for us doesn't seem to stop when the university locks down. We seem to be able to continue that key service of touching base and referring students easier than many other services on campus, which is fantastic. One of the other key things is still making sure that student voice is heard. So we've made decisions not to disestablish any of our student voice framework. So we'll still have residents associations and residential advisory committee groups and student reps meeting regularly with staff, even if they're not on site. We make sure that those voices are still heard, and we're asking them questions like, hey, what have you heard from your friends who are on site? You're the student president of this community. How are you engaging? And that feeds into that great piece of student involvement. We're launching our first online accommodation community gaming competition that's made the gaming nerds really happy. I have no idea what League of Legends is like. You're talking to someone who played Age of Empires in the early 90s. So, but to see some of that excitement has just been really awesome. And then the last thing that we've been really communicating with our students is to love your bubble. And we're talking about two bubbles. So the bubble is the term that our lovely Prime Minister is using for your lockdown family. So if you're still on campus, we are your bubble. We will protect you and you will help protect us as well, because we're essential services on campus. But also love your digital bubble. So just remembering that while we might be geographically apart, we're all in this together. So those are some of the things that we've sort of been really playing with. So for me, it's been letting students know, hey, while there's uncertainty here, we're still going to continue with the things that you really enjoy and love, and you're still going to see those really friendly faces. I will acknowledge that what's helped us with this at the University of Auckland is that we were well positioned to go on to online teaching very early. So our students had a week of disruption, and then they've gone back to their normal class schedule online. So that's actually really helped with keeping them busy. And by us sort of not changing our program too much, we've allowed students to add some structure into their lives. So for example, we've encouraged them to go, hey, look, you might want to make a study space in your home for when you're doing class from 9 to 5, but at 7 o'clock at night when we're communicating with you, it's okay to be in your PJs, and it's okay to be in a space that you're more comfortable with, because we're not going to be testing you academically. So those are some of the differentials that we've really encouraged our resident managers and coordinators to carry on with, which is fantastic. So yeah.
Thanks, Jacob. I am just going to throw to Joel quickly, just to give us, we are going to talk a little bit more about ideas later, but these are just some of the online resources that we found particularly useful in programs we've rolled out over the last couple of weeks digitally. So Joel, do you just want to give us a rundown of, obviously Zoom we're on, so everyone's probably aware of that, but the others that are there?
Yeah, absolutely. There is only a very, very small capture of what we have been using, but these are definitely that have been instrumental in the programming that we've rolled out at DRS. Canva, I'm not sure whether any of you know about Canva, but is a platform where you can, if you've got no design skills like me, you can go on there and steal someone else's design skills and then manipulate it to put in your own content. So that has really driven our ability to communicate in an aesthetic, I guess, platform, which has been really good. We've run weekly online trivia nights through Kahoot, which is a fantastic platform for students to engage with, and I'm sure and very confident that most of your students would already be across it, but being able to use it in a residential space is or has been very, very beneficial for us. House Party, which is another one, some of us on the call today, I'm sure, are all across House Party. That's a platform where your students can engage. They can all sign in and they can play Heads Up from the Ellen DeGeneres show, or they can play a trivia night, or there are many, many different ways that they can engage in that space. And in a residential capacity, you can set up a house party and then have people join. It's been a really fantastic tool that we have used. Netflix Party, that's just a wonderful way. So if I've got one login, rather than just having Netflix on my computer screen, I can have it on all of our residents' computer screens, which is wonderful. So that's been a really, really great platform. And the last one there is Calm. For those that don't know, that's a mindfulness app, but it's also a website where students can go on and get access to a multitude of free resources for mindfulness and meditation and anything to do with mental welfare. So they're probably the 6 that we've leveraged the most over the last few weeks, but definitely not the only ones.
Thanks, Jill. There is just a couple of questions and a bit of a comment. Luke Riley, thank you, as well as League of Legends. They have had great success launching a dedicated Minecraft server for our residents. That sounds exciting. Luke, did you want to just unmute and give us a quick rundown of what that is? I've put him on the spot now.
While he does that, yeah, we've got great success with Minecraft as well. It's no microphone. He'll put it in the
Luke's got no microphone,
text.
so he can't talk to us at all. What I'll do is I'll get him to put it into the text, because that'll get shared with the recording for everyone. And I'm sure Luke would be more than happy to have more of a chat if that's something. But yeah, Jacob, you've done that too?
Yeah, well, I haven't done it. I tell you what, do you know what was quicker than people panicking about COVID-19 was when the announcement came down that lockdown was happening in New Zealand. There was a Minecraft server up on every accommodation Facebook page within like 5 minutes. So it's amazing how quickly students can mobilize when it's something near and dear to them. So yeah, there's a whole bunch of interesting ways that students are re-engaging with each other, and that's why I think it's important to empower them to share those stories.
There is a comment there as well about being a big security. It has been a big security issue with House Party app, and I know there's been a lot of commentary even around Zoom and the lack of security. I guess you are going to have to do your own risk assessments around what that looks like. Certainly from a House Party perspective, it's been a resident to resident use of that app rather than it being a professional staff to resident use of the app. So in that sense, the individual users, much like you use your own personal Facebook logins, are taking on that responsibility of being aware of I guess security issues, etc. Certainly not an avenue you would want to share particularly private content or anything that you would not normally want to share with the wider world. But I think it's very much using that social space, so that we've left that with resident to resident to do. Likewise with Zoom, I mean, obviously there is certain content that you wouldn't want shared with the world, but you know, unless you want Hamish Blake dropping in on your Zoom at the moment, I think it just depends on what level of content's being shared across these platforms. And this is really being looked at as more of an engagement, open, not something we'd be concerned about security with in this sense for engagement, but absolutely obviously need to make sure people are comfortable with that. There's another one there just about everyone terminating rent payments when students choose to move back home. If we've got time at the end of this, we'll come back to it. This is, I know it's a topic that may well have its own webinar, because there's been a lot of talk about what people are doing in this rent payment and hardship space. It's probably best that we park that for now, but we'll try and get back to it at the end of this. But if not, that'll be probably one of the next webinars that we are coming out to the team with. I'm just going to move through just to make sure we get through the rest of this. I'll go back through the comments that are there and answer any that that we can, and just give some more updates as we go. Just wanted to introduce this to you. I guess when we were looking at our programming, which we do when we normally do our programming each year, we just were focusing on these aspects. So just remembering consistency is key. I think what happens, and particularly it looks like this is going to be an elongated period. It's not going to be a week or two, it's going to be months. So making sure that you're scheduling posts, you're thinking a couple of weeks ahead. You want your residents looking forward to the next challenge and the next event. And what you don't want is a heap of excited staff or team members posting a whole heap in week one and then it just dies. You'll lose traction and people will kind of turn off. Likewise, you don't want to be bombarding them in one instance and so they switch off from any engagement. So I think consistency is really important, and try getting your planning in advance. Control, I guess, ensuring you're using the right platform for the right program, and that comes back to the comment around security and safety. You know, nobody wants to Zoom a meditation when there's 40 other faces looking at them and they're trying to meditate. Like, you need to start thinking about, is the platform that you are getting used to using the right platform for the particular program that you're delivering? So it's not very relaxing knowing 40 other people are, you know, if you're like me, you start getting the giggles halfway through and it'll ruin the whole thing for everyone. So you might want to use a different channel in order to do those kind of programs. So make sure your digital platform matches your actual outcome that you're planning for. Conduct as with everything that we do, and I know we all do this across all spaces, you set your boundaries, as we did today, even on this Zoom call around microphones, etc. It just means that everybody is on the same page. Likewise, you know, you want to do TikTok Tuesdays, challenges, you want them to be funny, but you don't want them to cross the lines of your community values or your residential environment. So, you know, set your boundaries up front. Everyone then knows how they're playing in that space. Cost efficiency, there is absolutely no doubt that digital programming is going to save money, and at the moment that is a key consideration for all of us across the board. And I know budgets and rental conversations are going to be on the front of a lot of what we do. Budgets are tight. It's a great way to deliver cost-effective programming to the masses using this digital process. Obviously, though, you know, if you can, throw in the odd online voucher prize to keep people engaged, or have something, even if it's tiny, it just adds to that engagement and people wanting to continue to be part of it. And then communication, making sure everyone has access to your communication. For us, we did we actually checked that all of our residences that remain in room had Facebook, and I know that that's something that, say, at other campuses didn't have because there was a large Chinese cohort, or so you need to make sure that whatever you normally communicate with is actually getting through to everybody that you need it to make sure that they're all still being reached. So you also will need to decide whether you want everyone, whether they're off campus or on campus, to benefit from your programming. So DRS made the decision that that kind of programming would be open to everyone, even those that had left residences, but you might make a different decision and say, no, it's only a benefit to those that are currently with us at that time. So they're just, I guess, some little guidelines or thought bubbles that we had around when we're putting this stuff together. In regards to ideas, creating a plan for virtual engagement can include lots of platforms. You can get ideas from anywhere. I'm a self-confessed, you know, middle-aged woman that probably isn't the most au fait on what is out there, and things are changing very rapidly. So your teams, whether they're your residential leadership or student leadership teams, or your peers, will have great ideas. People at home will have great ideas. The great thing at the moment is that everyone working from home and doing different things means we're actually seeing cross-industry initiatives that can be applied. So great to absorb ideas from wherever you can get that from, whether it's external stakeholders, internal stakeholders, or your own teams. So, you know, really important that we channel all the ideas that we possibly can. I will throw back to Joel. These are just some of the events that have taken place for us over the last couple of weeks, and or Jacob, if you want to chime in here too, just based on those models we were talking about. So Joel, do you want to give some specifics around how we've kind of implemented these and what sort of engagement and what's worked and what hasn't worked?
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of learnings about things that haven't worked, which is good that we got that out of the way. So hopefully we can just go onwards and upwards after the remainder of the COVID-19 crisis. Anything that where students engage or have the opportunity to post on whatever platform you have, including Facebook, or whether you've got closed websites or whatever that platform might be, wherever students can engage and post something that they're doing either with themselves or with a fellow resident, we've seen really great engagement. However, surprisingly, and I was pleasantly surprised, the #1 engagement that we've had was a daily activation we ran called Post Your Pet. And within 3 hours, we had 187 comments of individuals posting pictures with their pets and showing them to the rest of the community. So that was really wonderful to see. We do know that a lot of other institutions use Instagram. We don't use a closed Instagram group at DRS, whereas other institutions might, so I can't really speak too much to that. But TikTok or a Trick Shot Thursday or anything where, as I said, students are getting out, getting moving, we've seen really great engagement. What some of our students, like Jacob mentioned, who are into gaming, have taken a real lead on that gaming space and really those students that aren't necessarily inclined in gaming have really taken to that. I don't know whether that's out of pure boredom or just resorting to something that they haven't tried before, which is also really good. Tea and talks are a little bit of a hit and miss at times for us. It's a really good opportunity, but we run those across all campuses here. So across all 4 campuses at DRS, we open that up to anybody. So some people find that really encouraging to be have the ability to talk to somebody that they've never met, and other people find that to be quite intimidating. So some events that you run might appeal to some specific cohort members and not so much others. We do run a weekly Facebook Live, which is also, I saw Anastasia, you mentioned that as well, which is something that we found really useful. And we, as Marian's got there, we also do weekly residential leadership meetings via Zoom with myself and our teams, just to try and continue that relationship, so that if and when we do sort of recover from this, whether it be trimester 2 or trimester 3, we've still got that deep sense of foundational relationship with the residential leadership team that can then spread out into the wider community. So there are definitely some things that we have learnt work really well. But again, it's the humbling thing that we've learned is it's cohort to cohort. So you would know your cohorts better than I definitely would. And some things that appeal to us in Geelong don't appeal to those in Melbourne because they've got a high international student cohort. So we've had to manipulate a few things that we do here and there. So really, I would just encourage you to give something a go. And if it doesn't work, try something different the next week. Unfortunately, the reality is, I think, of this situation, we've got a few weeks to make those learnings. So just try, leverage from some others in the industry. I can see some of the chats along the side are really, really positive, and other people are posting ideas. So don't be afraid to reach out and ask the things that are working and things that, you know, you might like to try in your own institute. And then if it doesn't work, you've got the luxury, quite literally, of changing it up the following week.
Jacob, anything else to add from your guys? That's
No, not
particularly
really.
worked well?
Yeah, I fully total support everything that Jel has mentioned from DRS. I think don't underestimate the power of trying to think creatively around how can you do something. So for example, the week that we went into lockdown, there was meant to be a huge inter-faculty rugby competition at the university. That was then turned into, in your back lawn, do the best TikTok video of a rugby pass that you can do. So I am not a middle-aged man, but I am very social media challenged, and so I've just downloaded TikTok the other day. My poor eyes, some of the things that people are posting on there, and you just come across the student and you're like, okay. But yeah, no, TikTok, and even thinking about doing simple things. I know that a lot of our self-catered students in our studio buildings are loving online dinner parties with each other, where they all sit there and they pretend to smell each other's food. It's really bizarre, but very cute at the same time. So it's actually funny that some of the initiatives we will do in person are having a much better engagement online. So yeah, just I fully think all those things are great ideas, and I'm loving seeing some of the engagement in the chat box, you know, baby photos and other bits and pieces. So yeah, I would just say that, you know, just make sure that if you're going to be in a space, make sure that you've got a really clear purpose. So I do a very clear Facebook Live post to students about updates. I make sure that when I'm engaging on Facebook, that's what I'm doing. I'm providing that information at a predetermined time. We're doing actually the 4-week beard challenge at the moment. First time in my life. It's going horrendous, but there were 2 options, shave my head or grow facial hair. I chose the other one. So I've tried to humanize my updates by participating in that challenge with my students. And then I make sure that I move away and I leave TikTok for them and I leave Netflix watch parties for them. I'm not going to be lurking in those digital spaces because I wouldn't if they were on campus, and I don't want to be, you know, omnipresent in their digital spaces going, how is this working? Is it working well? So just make sure that whatever you're engaging with, that you've got a clear purpose and clear consistency in that, similar to those programming fundamentals Marian mentioned.
There are some great ideas on the chat, which you'll all obviously get as well. Thank you for sending those in. But yeah, great one of a Guess Who game with students and staff baby pictures via Facebook. More gaming around FIFA, played virtually, TikTok photography, etc. So some really good ideas coming through. You can use Tabletopia to run and play game events online, and it's free. So there's a link there as well on the chat. So that'll get shared with everyone. And yeah, cooking classes has also been a great one that staff can actually do from home, which the Campus Life team have hosted a simple cooking class via Zoom as well.
And just to jump in very quickly, Marion, one of the things I guess I wanted to emphasise too is obviously right now students are craving a variety of interaction and online engagement, but it'll be interesting to see over coming weeks whether that's sustainable and what that looks like. And I think we need to be very mindful of also providing them with an opportunity to unplug, disconnect, perhaps, you know, or I think we talked a little bit, you know, about that space just to just be rather than always be, you know, in some sort of event or activity or competition. So I think that'll be an evolving area, and I'm really interested to get feedback from others as to what that looks like and what kind of feedback we get from students.
Yep. Yep. Just wanted to have a quick chat about some useful resources. On the APSAA website, we do have discussion forums for members. So you log into the members section and there's a COVID-19 discussion forum, but there's student experience discussion forums. They have not been particularly active, and I understand people have a hesitancy sometimes to be writing on there on behalf of their institutions, but I would encourage you to use them as a great tool. Akuho, I have got some roundtables coming up, and I know Edwina has shared some of those, and we have the information for those for people to join. There is the ResLife Global Support Group, which Laura is an administrator of, which has also brought in some great ideas from around the world, the UK, Berlin, etc. So there's some good stuff happening where they're at different points in this COVID environment. We've got some resources for some helpful tips for Zoom, some podcasts, etc. So we'll email all of those out to everyone that is here, so that you've got those available to you to have a look at. So yeah, keep an eye on your emails. You'll get that come through to you in the next couple of days. We are getting very close to the end. I just wanted to I guess, drop this as a bit of something we've been talking about. It seems scary we're talking about 2021 when we're trying to manage a crisis in 2020, but one of the things that we've really seen that's going to be a problem quite quickly is our student leadership model at DRS for 2021. So usually we find that we have a pool of students throughout the year, and then towards the end of the year we get into that recruitment phase for the following year of the first year residents that we've really identified through our programming and interactions to be the leaders for the following year. So obviously, depending how long this happens and how long this goes, there could be an impact whereby recruitment, we don't know them well enough. They've only been with us for 5 weeks before they were either asked to leave or in sort of lockdown environments. So we're doing some work in engaging with our 2020 leaders to entice them to remain. We invested an awful lot in training with them, and so I encourage you to think about what does that look like for you too. They've obviously missed an opportunity this year to stamp, particularly this first semester or trimester, whatever you're working on, their impact. So there is an opportunity there to kind of say to them, hey, why not give it a real hot go next year, so that you're not retraining or trying to recreate the wheel. But it really is just, I guess, a thought bubble from us around what does 2021 leadership models look like for you in a student leader space. Your pool that are now currently with you is lesser than it was. What are we doing to keep those that are engaged warm, and how are we going to get them back and have the models that we're traditionally used to learning, working with, whether it's RAs, RLs, etc., and ratios. And I know that's always a bit of a funny one to talk about because everyone's got different models and different ratios, but whatever that means for you, I encourage you to start thinking about what that looks like now, because you may need to do some significant work towards the end of this year in order to make sure the impacts in 21 are not continue to be felt in this space. Just, I guess that's kind of it as far as on this particular topic. I know that there would be a million questions and things that are out there. it's been so amazing to see so many APSAA members get involved in this, and just shows to us that there is a real need for staff across the board that are working in this ResLife space to have a medium to talk and to share, because everyone's feeling the same. As I said, we've taken notes from today. The recording will get shared, the notes will get shared where people have contributed. Please feel free to contribute anything further, and we will identify the opportunities for additional webinars, etc. So please keep them coming in and let us know. We'll send a really short survey out to you all just on this particular webinar, but giving you an opportunity to identify topics for us to continue to talk about and how you would like that to be set up. Apologies, it was not an open flowing conversation due to our numbers, but I hopefully feel you've got something out of it that you can take back, and then we can develop some smaller groups if we need to off to the side to continue the conversations. APSAA is really open to your ideas and suggestions and how you want to work in this space and facilitate that. And for those of you on the call that are not necessarily ResLife Campus Life, we want to hear from you about the topics for you, and rent and finance is obviously one we're hearing loud and clear. So we'll probably look at setting a webinar up around discussion around what people are doing in that space from a financial perspective. But likewise, if there's operational or facilities type avenues that you'd like to explore, we will be more than happy to do that. Laura is actively with the PD committee trying to get some stuff together quickly. The directive from the executive is we can't do these once a month. It's not good enough. Right now is when people need this access. So we will be pumping out them fairly quickly after the Easter long weekend. And it may be that we have multiple throughout those subsequent weeks to tackle different topics. So appreciate you giving us that feedback so that we can build that program around that.
And just to add on that, Marion, we're really keen for our members to, take the lead in perhaps facilitating some of these webinars. So if you feel that you have something to share from your campus, or, you've got particular expertise in a topic, we are certainly very keen to see case studies from particular institutions, or if you have a background professionally or personally, please do reach out, because we are reliant on you guys also sharing your content and information.
Yeah. Anything else from you, Jacob?
I just would like to thank you, Marion. I think, just saying to the membership as Vice President, I get to witness a lot of the work that you're doing, and I think it's been phenomenal watching you balance your three hats, and those three hats I would say are your Deacon Res hat, looking after your students on campus and your staff, your APSAA hat, looking after our members across Asia Pacific, but also, during this uncertain time, making sure that you, your partner and your children are all well looked after. So I think it's absolutely amazing that you've been able to, keep membership and your students and your family in the forefront of your mind. So just thank you for the work that you do. In absence of a conference in a couple of weeks, I just thought I'd throw it out there to the 100 or so people listening that your work's been phenomenal. So well done there.
Thank you. Thanks, Jacob. Have a very strong right-hand man in all facets of my life. Yeah, okay. I am conscious of time, everybody, so we will pull that to a close. Thank you so much for taking part. Really, really do look forward to catching up with all of you. Please reach out, as we said, and we will continue to offer these as free resources at this time to you, and hopefully you're all staying well, and hopefully you do get some rest over this long weekend across the board. So good luck, everybody, and we will chat soon.
Matiwa.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.